One.
Hello, welcome. All right, and as everyone joins in, I am going to ask that everyone kind of stay on mute in deference to our panelists and moderator, just to try to keep background noise down. And then we can unmute later with when we do some question and answers. So with that, I will turn it over to Pamela to get us rolling.
Okay, well, good afternoon and welcome. I'm Pamela Priest, Vice President of Education at MBNA, and thank you for joining us for this important and timely discussion. Recent tariff changes have created new challenges across our industry. While we may hold a range of perspectives on these developments, today's conversation is focused on what we can control, how we respond to as business owners, suppliers, and professionals. And before we begin, a quick housekeeping note and a reminder that MBNA complies strictly with antitrust laws. During today's discussion, we will not be discussing specific prices or any efforts to coordinate pricing among members. Examples include sharing specific percentages or dollar amounts of price increases, agreements to all lower, keep, or raise prices, or charging specific fees as a group, or encouragements to have others engage in certain pricing practices. So thank you for your cooperation with that. Instead, we will focus on, our focus is on sharing best practices, strategies, and insights for navigating the business impacts of these changes. And finally, if you could please help us reduce background noise by keeping yourself on mute during the panel discussion. We will take your questions at the end, so feel free to put your questions in the chat as you think of them. So with that, let's, before we begin the panel discussion, I'm pleased to introduce Steve Kohn, MBNA Manufacturer Wholesaler Division President and CEO of Adams Granite, who will walk us through what is and isn't changing with the latest tariffs. So, Steve?
Thanks, Pamela. Hello, everyone. So to kind of help give a little bit of a synopsis of the roller coaster that we have gone through over the past several weeks, the actual language that is currently in play for any and all tariffs that impact products that we would typically import in our industry, or the most common countries. We're currently looking at what they call ad valorem rates, or in addition to rates that are being added on top of current tariff rates that were already in effect, which were most likely already built into pricing that you were getting from your suppliers. So the additional tariffs that are currently being added on as of April 10th is a 26% tariff that was reduced to 10% for the country of India, a 30% tariff that was reduced to 10% for the country of South Africa, and a 50% tariff that was increased to 150% for the country of China. Currently, all items imported from Canada do fall under the USMCA and are at the moment, other than a 4-day window at the beginning of April, are excluded from any additional tariffs, and hopefully will continue to maintain that for colors like Canadian mahogany and mountain rose. In terms of the sort of the key next major dates to watch out for, there has been a little of off-the-cuff information out there in the media that still hasn't actually been issued on paper, but something of note that happened just recently on April 29th was that the ad valorem component for anything that is currently being tariffed from Canada is no longer going to be a stacking or in addition to tariff rate. That does not yet apply to us in our industry, which is pretty fantastic, but very well could in the future, should things change. The big date to be cognizant of moving forward is July 9th. All of those countries I mentioned that had a tariff rate that was reset to 10%, that expires technically on July 9th unless there are additional changes. And then products from India and South Africa would then jump from that 10% flat rate to a 26% and 30%. And in terms of China, the tariffs that we are at right now from China are also ad valorem. So depending on the type of granite, you can be looking at a complete tariff value of around or up to 187%. That is where we're at the moment in terms of the actual language that is in all of the executive orders that are currently at play.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Now let's introduce our remaining panelists and hear more about what they are seeing in their business. So first, Lenin, if you could briefly introduce yourself and share additional updates on what you're seeing with tariff issues.
Thank you, Pamela. I'm Lenin Kailasammani. I'm the founder and CEO of Salem Stones. We are wholesalers of granite memorials, 3 locations: Columbus, Ohio, Elberton, Georgia, and New Jersey, Robbinsville, New Jersey. I think whatever Steve said is exactly right. Those are the percentages. And just regarding the percentages, okay, I think that's what I would share right now, and then wait for the following questions. So primarily, we get products, if we import, then it comes from India or China. India, like for every country, there was a reciprocal tariff they came up with. Like Steve said, that was 26% for India. Now they put a pause on it for 90 days. Now, the one that Steve mentioned about 10% for India product, that is a base rate. I think that is defined as something. It's not just for granite or any like or specific country. If you bring product into United States, that's going to be a base 10%. So there's a fair chance that that stays. Whatever happens on July 9th, that 10% stays. So what it is for us, if not today, but at some point, this will be baked into our pricing at some point. Because if it's always 10%, why are we itemizing it, right? So again, if this all could change, but as of today, that's the story. With China, that's singled out. Like that's a lot of changes. It is at total. If you add all together, it stays at 187. Now, President Trump has recently said at some point, he said that it could come down substantially. It won't be zero, but it could come down substantially. But that is not a certain statement, but that's something President Trump said. So there is uncertainty in that direction. I'm just sharing what is happening, and then as far as the positive thing, it is not finalized, like Steve said, but there's a lot of positive things happening around India. Like Vice President Vance was in India recently, and US sees them as a long-term ally and things like that. So there might be some good news there. So this is all we know. You might have already read it, but I thought I'd share that with you right now.
Lenin is absolutely right, and there is still a lot of movement going on. All the current facts that we have right now are based entirely on what's actually been written in an executive order, and it does look like these 10% flat rates that have been applied above and beyond other tariffs that were already at play will most likely stay. But the big question that we're all still waiting to hear more about is, what kind of deal making will be done between now and July 9th to see which countries still remain with major tariffs and which don't. Another big one for our industry that I forgot to mention is Cambodia. Their rate also is currently at that same flat 10%, but on the 9th could jump as high as 49%. And it does not sound like there's been any kind of movement there or negotiations or conversations with the administration. So so far, it looks like that may go into effect, which could definitely impact a lot of a rather popular gray that is found around the country. But it's still a little bit of a wait and see as these negotiations with the administration develop, and whether or not those rates will actually increase as they potentially could for all what was originally 62 countries and is now 75 countries on the reciprocal tariff list that was originally announced on April 2nd.
Okay, thank you. And introducing our final speaker, Nathan, if you could briefly introduce yourself and any updates you might have.
My name is Nathan Lange. I own Northland Companies up in northern Minnesota. As well as President MBNA right now, I am a retailer just like most of you on this call. So along with some of these questions that are coming up, I can kind of give what we've done within our company to combat some of this, and how we're handling it with our customers and how that's all going. I mean, this is kind of an uncertain time for all of us. We don't really know. I'm really glad Steve and Lenin gave all the details because I'm not that guy. So they gave you kind of what's current, what's there, and it's still kind of muddy in the waters. But we're all kind of going through this together, and I can kind of share later on through the questions on what we've done to make some changes in our company so that this has happened. I mean, realistically, no one in this industry should or can absorb any of these costs, right? I mean, I understand stuff that's been priced and ordered and whatever, but we need to make some swift changes fast for all of your guys' businesses so that this isn't going to hurt you in the long run here, because ultimately it ends up on the customers. Like I said, the businesses can't absorb this, and you shouldn't. So we'll just move forward with that.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. I guess we'll get into our questions, and I'll probably actually throw this one at you first, Nathan. You can start it off. How are you educating your customers about the impact of tariffs without overwhelming them with details, such as, what language or resources have you found effective?
When our customers come in, I mean, it's a standard practice. We have all the colors on display from all over the world, American and domestic. We do have all of our monuments labeled American made, right, a sticker that we put right on every monument that's on display. That just kind of helps decipher some of this, right? Everybody in the news has their own vision of what tariffs are. So most people in the world, honestly, the more you talk to them, don't even know what it's affecting or how it is affecting them. The news is saying it's bad, so they think it's bad, right? So what we're doing is basically, like I said, we're differentiating what's imported and what's not, just so that's up front, because a lot of people can make their own conclusions when they're coming in. Again, we're not getting into the details of this tariff and that cost and this cost, because it changes every so often, so it's not there. We just basically explain that these products are international, and they're based on, they have they're subject to international tariffs, and they will affect the final price. Now, we found, again, it's very simple. This item may be subject to import tariffs, which could affect the final price. Like a lot of us, we're ordering the stone, we don't have it in inventory. It could be 3 to 6 months before it gets here. I have no idea what that price is going to be when it gets here. So I guess a lot of that is just going to be real short and simple. When the customer comes back and says, well, what's that price increase going to be? You just be open and honest with them, and your guess is as good as mine. Honestly, is going to be your best bet. Today it's 150. Tomorrow it could be 25. We really don't know. And it's up to them to decide on that, whether they want to go down that road or not. Some are just saying, yeah, I'll roll the dice. This is the price today. I think it's going to come down because we're doing the same thing. Like if we're basing our price off today's and the tariffs are going to drop, I told them like, we'll drop our price too. I'm fully transparent. And at the end of the day, really, when we start looking at this from a retail side, we're talking about the raw cost of the stone, not the finished retail sandblasted installed price, right? So your change in price, in my opinion, and what we're doing is we're manipulating that price. Okay, the tariff is going to be $100 more, or $200 more. We're not talking, a $5,000 monument's now going to be $5,000 more because there's a 100% tariff, right? I mean, if the raw materials, that's that. But if you're selling a retail, a dollar amount, that's why I'm not supposed to talk about pricing, but just an example, we're just taking the tariffed amount and passing that along, not the actual, sandblasting and installed and all of the other, drawing part of it, because our prices didn't fluctuate with that.
And do Steve or Lennon have anything to add that they're using?
Yeah, Steve, whenever you want to go first, you just let me know, okay? I don't want to.
No, take it away, Lenin.
Yeah, so the way we have divided this is one is the stock order versus the custom order, right? So if it is a stock item, if it is already in the warehouse, then what are we doing about tariff? And that, so basically there is a policy of how we view this is a long-term partnership with our retailers. I built this business during recession, then we faced the COVID together, and now there is a tariff challenge. So this is not a question of anyone trying to make more money off of it. It's just we rise and fall together in this. And so as far as stock item, if we already in the stone is in the country, then there is no tariff involved, at least for the India stone. But for China, we paid 25%. So we are proportionately, whatever the original policy was, it stays there. Now the challenge is with the custom stone. And what happened was some of these custom stones, customers ordered, we made it overseas, and there was a date restriction that it has to leave by certain time, like April 9th or something like that, close to that. And then it has to arrive in the country by May 22nd. So we determined a good set of orders face that criteria. Then there are certain products that it has not even left overseas, so we know for sure that it is going to have some kind of tariff. Then there is in between where it left but did not leave it to our liking. It is going to reach after May 22nd, where we are going to pay a hefty tariff, right? Now, what is easier, or like the give and take between a wholesaler and a retailer? When it is a 10%, like the India product, it is relatively easier to absorb it. I'm sure that that isn't all the way around. Like Nate's example, if it is 10% to the wholesaler price, then we might even absorb or whatever every company choose to do, but it's also more palatable for the retailer and life goes on. But I think the challenge is if we did not plan for this high an increase, let's say 180% increase, then what do we do? Right? Then what do we do? Who's going to pay for it? And in our company, there is a set of orders. It fell under that category. That is, it left overseas, won't make it by May 22nd, and we will pay to the tune of 180%. And at that point, we are individually having conversation with the retailers about that. And hence, the retailer in turn has to talk to the family. It's a small subset of orders, but that challenge remains. If it is small percentage, easy to manage, but this high, what do we do? There is no precedence for that, and I think we have to deal with that case by case basis.
Absolutely. To answer some of the questions that I'm seeing kind of come through the pipeline here, there was a unique window for items from China that if they were on board a vessel prior to April 5th, and were able to land in, and that vessel was what they would refer to as the mother vessel, bringing it to our port, to the port of entry in the United States, not a vessel that's going to, for example, land in Korea and then change again to a different vessel to come to the States. If it was on a vessel prior to April 5th and arrived before May 22nd, it would be exempt from those tariffs. But anything that was put on the water after that would have to face the full brunt of any tariffs moving forward. In terms of the reciprocal tariff list countries, including India, Cambodia, South Africa, those are all in regards to when things hit the port of entry. So that 10% tariff, blanket tariff increase does go into effect on everything that's for a lot of retailers has already been ordered and has been in process for some time. So there is a general 10% hit that we're all experiencing in some form or fashion. The question is, on July 9th, does that then turn into a 26% or 30%, et cetera?
Thank you. And we've kind of probably touched on a little bit, answered some of this, but for all three of you, have you changed your quoting process to better prepare customers for potential price adjustments, such as do you include disclaimers in sales, time limits, or any conditional pricing?
On the retail side of things, we have changed our quote. You know, we pretty much are down to like a 10-day, like this quote's good for 10 days. I don't know what else it is. But at the same time, and this will answer some of the questions in the chat as well. Any imported stone currently going through our shop, and this has been since the tariffs were announced, I've created a separate document that my customers need to sign at time of quote and at time of sale that basically states, I have it here quick, that this product is subject to import tariffs that may be applied when it enters the United States. That we strive to provide accurate pricing at the time of your order, but these tariffs are determined by international trade policies and can change without notice. As a result, the final cost of the product may increase once it arrives in the US. By signing this, you agree that you will or may incur an additional cost to your stone once the stone is arrived in the US. So we have made every single customer sign this since it's came out. I mean, I didn't addend my contract, and basically there's some more legal contract, like this isn't, attached to the contract. And I'm making them sign that just so they are well aware. It's in bold writing. This is not just lumped in a big pile of paperwork. That each one of our customers and the quoting and on our contractor side that are signing that, so or seeing that.
Thank you, Nate. Like at the wholesale level, Pam, we are doing something similar. So we especially the topic is China, like, right, let's meaning right now with import India or China. India is at 10%, relatively lesser problem, but July 9th could be a different story. But China is where the number is high. So basically what we are saying is we are quoting based on where it is today, but it could change based on when it arrives. And what we are saying is if we pay less than what it is today, then we'll respect that and pass that savings to the customer as well. And then if it goes up, that is going to be an increased cost. That is how we are positioning that uncertainty.
Yeah, similarly from our perspective, we are, it really does come down to the timing of the order and just how fast we can process it to accommodate as little tariff impact as possible. And we acknowledge from our standpoint as a manufacturer that there's going to be some sort of bookends and areas where we may have to, take it on the chin in terms of commitments we've made to customers, but we're doing our best to communicate real-time rates and update as many of them as possible so that they can communicate as well, and also create a little bit of that sense of urgency with their own customers as far as, you know, how things could impact them in the future to help expedite approvals and everything else.
And how, all three of you, how are your customers reacting to the idea of future surcharges or variable pricing? Like, are there any surprises in terms of pushback from them, or is it everybody being pretty understanding?
Initially, especially during that first week of April, when there was a lot of confusion and conflicting information from different media sources, and nothing really actually issued in official decree, there was plenty of pushback and fear. But after the 10th, things seemed to smooth out a little bit, and everyone now is very much on the same page. It's more now coming down to, you know, a lot of our customers and retailers across New England are looking at, you know, what is the timeline of their orders and when will they be impacted, and so that they can appropriately have those conversations with their customers. So, and we've really drilled down with them to go, you know, order by order and item by item to make sure that they have as up-to-date information as possible, and they can quote correctly to their customers or give their customers updates based on the timing. Because for a lot of our retailers, you know, they're just as much waiting on that approval as we are. It's definitely about them upping the ante to drive the customer to make decisions, or to be very concrete about the fact that that decision won't come for some time, and that would potentially impact the pricing.
Can I say something
Yes.
or ask something? Jeff Poirier, the Quincy Memorials Group in Massachusetts. Had a couple questions I put in the chat there. One, is there anybody lobbying for our industry anywhere in Washington, D.C. or at the White House, anywhere up the line? Considering the fact that, you know, a granite is a natural resource, and granites that come from China, certain granites come from China or India or wherever, cannot be quarried in the United States. So there's a difference between whether it's something manufactured and whether it's a natural resource being quarried. So that should be a consideration in our industry at Washington, D.C. when they're making the decisions on which products should be considered in these tariffs and which shouldn't. So is there anyone lobbying for our industry with that argument currently? I don't know.
Nathan, you want to answer that?
I believe New York regionals, you know, they work on some lobbying, to be perfectly honest, as far as MBNA standpoint, because that would be the organization here. We are not set up and or financially got enough money to spend on, you know what I mean? Lobbying is to get tariffs taken away or not. So I guess at current state, I don't believe, I do know that MBNA is not partaking in that, and that's not our position in the industry. We'd love, you know, I understand what you're saying, but we're, you know, educating and trying to help out the best we can, but lobbying is a whole nother animal there.
But thank you, Ned. I'm understanding this as well. I didn't know this is a product of how much money we have for lobbying, right? But Jeff's point of, you know, Granite not being available, Jeff, like, you know, there's no lobbying, but we did write and call the local congressman that you know, let's say about 6 or 7 containers did not fit into any of the criteria that Steve mentioned, where it already left, it won't arrive by 22nd, so we'll lose a few $100,000, right? So, but the thing is, who's paying it, and we cannot pass it on to the retailer cannot pass it on to the families. So it's a hardship letter, but we, you know, just want to let you know, I did not get any reply we were pointed to some trade commission, Federal Trade Commission office in Ohio. No reply. So yeah, that's where it stands.
I mean, it's not necessarily just lobbying. It's you know, having a voice as a group, having a voice. We don't have to spend a bunch of money, but we can come together with a strategy to at least send a well-written letter to all of our congressmen up the line to push our message forward. It doesn't take much money to do that. It just takes some coordination and strategy with having a collective voice. So we could do that as an organization, or we could do that as all the organizations together, and have you know, as many retailers do that as possible. Flood the senators, flood the congressmen with these letters, you know, making our point. You know, that kind of message can make a difference. And so that's just my view on that.
To that point, Jeff, I think that a lot of us manufacturers got pretty aggressive, especially during that very strange window of time at the end of March, beginning of April, when there really wasn't anything concrete and there wasn't any actual written language or changes to the rules, at least none that made sense. So much so that, you know, for those of us that did have ways to connect with Customs and Border Patrol, they didn't know how to interpret things for a good 10 days or so, maybe even more. And you know, this didn't just impact Granite, so it was all industries across the board, and we were voices of many and many and many that were reaching out to complain. So and to just get some semblance of direction. So it was, I don't think it was a matter of us, you know, not necessarily, you know, the reason they didn't respond is because they were just overwhelmed with the number of people reaching out across all industries for the exact same reason. And so, you know, where we could, we got what little answers were available. They didn't really at the time give us much to work with. But so there really was that week to 10 day period of true uncertainty where things were changing very fast and very often, and media outlets were reporting different things depending on the day or the time of day. But the language that was issued on the 2nd changed on the 8th and changed again on the 10th, with a couple of things on the 9th. Was what we finally were able to rely on, at least to, you know, issue updates to our dealers and try to put together a plan. But yeah, it was a rocky road, and I'm sure all of those congressmen's phones were ringing off the hook because we were all banging on those doors.
I mean, timing can make a big difference of when that's done too.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, having it done now while people are waiting might be a better time to not overwhelm them. So it could be a strategy to do maybe within the next month or so. But
Okay, thank you for that question. I think I did see that come up in the chat a few times about, you know, what we're doing for lobbying. And if you continue to put questions in the chat, we'll have more time at the end for discussion on those. And for the panelists, have you found ways to turn tariff conversations into value-added opportunities? For example, emphasizing craftsmanship or helping customers feel informed and empowered in this confusing time?
From our point of view, kind of, you know, I look at some of these tariffs as kind of like what we just went through with COVID, right? There were so many unforeseens, shipping container prices, availabilities, on and on and on. We've used this in our own company to guide the customers. One, like, your inventory is non-tariffed, right? It's sitting here. It might not be, you know, I mean, a lot of these customers can be swayed in one way or another, and we've used tariffs to start moving some inventory. Now we're reordering inventory, and whatever that ends up landing, at least I can put a price tag on that and I know it's there, right? So inventory is one way we've been using that. And also, you know, I've steered people to different, you know, if they're really torn and really done, I mean, there's ways around it. We have a wonderful source of domestic manufacturers that can produce the materials as well. And then there is no tariffs. Yes, they're not the same colors. The price may be different. But there is customers that, can't, the color isn't the only thing they're looking for. The sculpted ones that was brought up in there, there is some different sources than China, other than China. There is some locally. And sometimes I've used that too to tell the people that the stone comes closer to their house, and you can dictate that sales process whichever way you want. You can dwell on the fact that this has got a tariff on it, or you can move them to the fact that I can, downsize my inventory and I can sell what I got currently laying on the ground, and we can get this American done and move on, right? But also the tariffs, I think a lot of our customers don't understand there's huge tariff. Like the news is throwing this out there, there's 150, 180%. But at the end of the day, the prices, yes, it is going up. But at the end of the day, to the end user, it's not like their monument is going to be 3 times the cost because of that tariff. And I think most of that is just educating the customer when they come in, because they don't understand. I had a customer come in here and say, we decided not to do our project, this is on a different industry, just because of these tariffs. And I'm like, well, none of these are tariff. Yeah, but the news says it's bad. I'm like, well, it is it's not affecting your project at all, but they were just so torn up about the word tariff and what's going on in the industry that they decided to stop. And I mean, it does suck. It moves on. Now, granted, the guy came back now and ended up doing his project anyways, because he realized the world's not ending tomorrow. So.
Thank you, Nate. Regarding that, I think there's a question also from Mark there. So, not as a value addition or add-on, Pam, from as a wholesaler's perspective, but the question where it's becoming out of reach is the Chinese product, and then when we look at what kind of products we get from there, the sculpted monuments we can get it from India. Like we used to get always flowers and trees kind of sculptures from India. Now we are getting like simple like angels, stock items. Angels would be the heart kind of thing, where it is very difficult to replicate the quality of China or take a longer lead time, would be those very involved sculpted monuments. Like, we will get like a Holy Family or like life-size Mother Teresa statue, things like those kind of projects. It is possible, but the solution doesn't seem to be very easy for us. But as far as the simpler sculpted monuments, we are able to move some of these things to lower tariff areas like India. So hope that helps.
Yeah. Steve?
We're similarly navigating the same thing. Products that come out of China tend to have a really high quality of sculpture for the price. So that is the most difficult type of item for a manufacturer like us to relocate and still be relatively competitive or within reason. We do also, as a manufacturer, do our own hand carving and sculpting in Barrie, and it obviously is a much different price point for the retailers and the consumers. And so there's a very, very marginal group of people that can afford that kind of work, especially when you're talking about large scenes or full sculptures. And so for affordable sculpting, in terms of quality of work, items that came from China seem to really, really do quite well. So it's definitely difficult with that new pricing there's even at a rate of 150% or 185% above and beyond the current costing, it's still a relatively good price point for those types of items. Those simpler items would definitely try to be redirected somewhere else where they don't necessarily have the technical skill yet, like India or Zimbabwe or something like that. So there are options that would be at lesser rates moving forward. I think really the biggest concern was more about stuff that was in process at the time when all this went into play and felt like for a lot of things overnight. So it really impacted stuff that most of us, both as manufacturers and retailers, had already made financial commitments on and quoted and confirmed with customers. And having to, potentially walk that back was something none of us wanted to do, and conversations we definitely didn't want to have. So trying to find ways to navigate those waters on stuff in motion was the most difficult. But yeah, we're hoping that some of those import vendors in places like India that look to have less of an overall tariff impact could potentially pick the ball up where it gets dropped and start to really provide that higher quality work. But like 10 years ago, it's going to be a learning curve. It's going to take some time, and so there will be a little bit of sort of tightrope walking as we all figure out the best source for those items.
Thank you. And all three of you, how do you train your sales or your customer service team to handle possible tough conversations around cost increases? Have you come up with scripts or, some other techniques that you've given to your staff?
From our standpoint, we rely on critical dates, and so we've set timelines for placing and confirming orders. Also, timelines for approvals, and trying to see how we can marry those up based on our production schedule to reduce the potential impacts, and that helps make the conversation relatively straightforward and a little bit more sort of business simple, and seems to work really well. But that's our approach so far, and so far seems to be working.
I mean, ours are similar. We've been just kind of internally in the office, we've been just sending out, weekly or bi-weekly emails. We originally went through some sales training on when this all came out, to educate our salespeople on what to say, what not, right? I mean, and honestly, most of the things the retailers can say is we don't know. I don't, I mean, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I'm not trying to make it sound worse than it is, but literally we just don't know. Somebody just said, speak the facts, and that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to be open and honest, because they don't know and we don't really know, and the best we can do is tell you what we can do now. We've been giving, when our vendors are giving us updates, we're giving our salespeople updates. But the fact of the matter is, we're probably in this for a while, that we're just going along. If it's an imported monument, this is our price today. Sign off on basically the piece of paper saying that the price could go up. We're doing everything in our power to not do that, but it's kind of, we can't take that in the chin when it does. So that's kind of where we're at with things.
Okay.
Open and honest.
Thanks, Nathan. In the interest of time, I want to throw this last question to Steve and Lenin. Based on your positions, how can retailers and manufacturers work more closely during this time?
Communication is key. I think that's first and foremost. It's really, staying on top of those orders and those timelines, and trying to just make the process between the manufacturer and the retailer as seamless as possible, and to consistently update on a regular basis. That's the best way to stay up to date. We'll certainly, as a manufacturer, try to communicate as much as we can as we learn of updates, and as things that are chirped about in the media actually get turned into, or don't get turned into, actionable fact. And make sure that our retailers are as up to date as they possibly can be. But yeah, don't shy away from it. Ask the questions. Follow up on orders that have been out there for a while. Whatever it takes, just ask.
Thank you, Steve and Brian, for this question. I'll try my best to answer this question. I think, this kind of trust between the wholesaler, manufacturer, and the retailer has to be earned. and I think COVID prepared us here, right? There was also an uncertain time where there was no end to how far the container freight could go. And then there was also complete uncertainty for the lead time. Is it 6 months, 3 months, right? So in those cases, we learned how to be transparent, how to prepare the retailers as far as setting the expectations. So that was a tough time. So we learned together and we navigated together. And it is not about importer, domestic manufacturer, all that. What happens is, end of the day, all our fate is tied together. Like, we rise and fall with this monument business, right? So if it goes well, we all do well. If it doesn't, then we go down. So basically, that is how we see it, and we also see this as a long-term thing. It is not a short-term. Can we make a quick buck when the tariff goes up or down? To that extent, how can we work together? Uh, to wholesalers to be very structured about their communication. Like, when we looked at our business, there's a difference between stock order and a custom stone, and there's also a difference between India stone and a Chinese stone. Then there is a question of what happened to the quotes that we are given so far that has not become an order. Then there are projects where it's a community projects. A city cemetery sold a columbarium. What you do, right? They raised money, paid it. Now what do you do? It's not a one family monument. So it is a class. It is not like we can think through everything, but only when we face it, we see it. But at the same time, having an open, transparent communication about this, and then when there are some challenges in specific to the order, to work together. I think there is no what how do they say like a clearly written thing for how to go about it, but to have that trust that we are all in this together and work together, I think.
Thank you. So we wanted to leave some time here at the end for your questions. So thank you to the panelists for your thoughts and discussion so far. So we want to hear from you. I know you've been putting questions into the chat, and if you haven't done that and you still have a question that maybe we haven't hit upon or you haven't seen in there, please feel free to go ahead and use that tool to add that. And Kim, I hope you've been keeping track of these and you can help me out with some of the questions.
Yes. Yes, I am. Absolutely. I think you guys have touched on most of the ones that are in the chat. There's one that maybe we haven't quite addressed. Hold on, I'm trying to find it again. And for those of you on the call, there's some great suggestions in the chat too, so maybe read through that. I think we touched on the sculpted products. And I actually think we've answered most of the questions in the chat here. So does anyone have any new questions?
Kim, one of the question, Steve, maybe you know better, but I would like to get back to just confirm this, because I'm not for sure. I think one of the question is the tariff assessed, is it upon arrival or when it ships out? I think the question is it when it ships out from the origin country or when it arrives at our US port, right? My assumption was when it arrives at US port, but John has replied that when it ships out. Do we know for sure? Steve, do you know, or anyone knows for sure what the deal is? I can get back to it, definitely. I can get back to it.
Sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, so the language on the reciprocal tariffs is the same language since April 2nd. The only thing that they made changes to was replacing the detail on the rates themselves. Excluding China, of course. China had its own set of language that was edited on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. So anything on the reciprocal list has the new flat additional rate of 10%, but those are based on date landed, not date shipped. The Chinese tariffs, because they were so extreme, they did adjust the language to specifically say based on when it left the port of export. But it had to be on a mother vessel, which means a vessel that was going from that port of export to our shores. If it was leaving China, but for example, which often does happen in international freight, it stops off in another country like Korea and gets shifted to a different boat, it would have to be that second boat's departure date
The
that
name
would
is
determine. Right. So if the container gets shuffled from one vessel to another and that shuffling happens after April 5th, then it is not exempt from the tariffs. So it would have to be on that final voyage to the United States by April 5th in order to avoid the tariff rate. And every other country has that flat 10% rate increase applied immediately after, I believe, April 8th or 9th, as far as when it lands in the country.
And looking at the chat or the questions here, I saw that I'm not sure that anybody can answer it, but Trevor was wondering, because he's located in Canada, you know, all of these discussions have been about stuff coming into the US, and we do have MBNA members in Canada. Can anybody speak to tariffs on items coming into Canada, or?
what is the question? Like, for example, if it comes from India to Canada, this whole tariff policy won't impact, right? Let's say,
Right.
is it
Right.
from US to Canada? Is what he's asking? Like, I'm confused.
I'll read it specifically. He said, to clarify, will this meeting only be about United States businesses, or will you speak to tariffs on items coming into Canada?
Coming into Canada from where?
Probably the US, I would assume.
I gotcha.
I don't know, unless Trevor can clarify.
Any
Alex?
products, yeah, any products from outside countries, not just Granite.
So-
That was his clarification.
So all of the tariff conversations that we're having today, Trevor, are entirely related to things that have been issued and changes that have been issued by the Trump administration in the United States. From my understanding, I haven't looked into any details specifically, but there has not been any updates of Canada making massive changes to any of their tariff rates with other countries like China or India. So as far as I know, there's no major fluctuation there. There was some question as to whether or not there would be back and forth tariffs between the United States and Canada, but that should have been resolved with the USMCA exemption. You know, other than some of the additional caveats that have come out recently regarding energy products and stuff like that.
And Kim, do you see anything else?
Yeah, so the clarifying question on that, so if a company ships from the US warehouse to Canada, so the tariffs are being charged by the receiving country. So that would be Canadian policy if there are any changes to Canadian tariffs. So these tariffs we're discussing today are on things coming into the United States, not things going from the United States to Canada. But you know, those trade deals are still being discussed as well.
Trevor, I really don't know the answer. Like, let's say US to Canada, anything changed? At least I don't know much about it.
All I'm aware of are specific types of products, Trevor. So things like steel and aluminum. I'm not sure if bronze is roped into that as well. But there is a 25% tariff currently on specific metals from the United States.
Reciprocal tariffs from Canada.
Correct. Yeah. And there's also a little bit of a beef specifically with Ontario that is causing additional tariffs on energy products. So things like electricity, gas and oil that are just specific to the province of Ontario.
We have a few more, just a few
One more
minutes
thing I'd like
left.
to address quickly here, because it was in the chat here too. You know, the conversation about what can MBNA do, you know, I will get with with the executive staff, and I will also get with the executive committee and staff, and we will come up with something that we can some letters that we can draft that we can send out to you guys, to the retailers, that then you can forward on to your you can sign with your name as well, that you can forward on to your senators, your congressmen, kind of it's gonna come better, obviously, as an organization. We can do that as well, but also from the retailer's point of view, and from the retailers directly. So that will be something we can work on here. I'll get a call put together on our end here in the back end with MBNA and get something together for that as soon as we can.
And I guess we're coming up to the end here, so if there aren't any other questions, I want to thank Lenin, Steve, and Nathan for all joining us for the panel. The tariff landscape is evolving, but through shared insight and peer connections, we can adapt together. We'll be sending out a recording of today's session along with a summary of key points and resources. And as always, MBNA is here to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out with any additional questions you might have, or, to expand upon anything we've discussed today. So with that, we will end it, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you all.
Everyone. Thanks,
Thank you,
Pamela.
guys. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.